Hey there everybody, Joe here. Thanks for tuning in again. So I'm back on the Harry Potter painting that I've been working on for so long, and I really want to get it done. This painting is for my son Joseph. I embarked on this project that was so much bigger than what I thought it was going to be, so much more difficult. I think that it's possible to paint a face just by memorizing key features. Not all features necessarily, but key features that really set that person apart and causes me to see their likeness. I think there's key features that I can use to be able to put together a unique pose that's not based off of a photograph. Well, I think that this maybe is unfairly called painting Harry Potter from memory. I mean, that was just an easy way to say it, but I'm not really doing it just from memory because I'm using tons of photographs. I just don't have a photograph of this picture, but the goal is to build up my knowledge of the three-dimensional features and then do a sufficient job of shadow and lighting in order to make it look like a believable pose. For the longest time I was just beat by this. I don't know why it's looking weird and I keep changing things around. I was really confident and my confidence plummeted in the middle of this job because I just couldn't figure it out. So I had a real breakthrough during this last week, so I want to share that with you. I kept getting this effect that was like this bubbly looking face. I think I've seen this in a lot of other paintings, especially if they're similar to this one where you're not necessarily basing the face off of a photograph, maybe making up a fictional face, maybe it's a character, or maybe it's just based off of a photo but not necessarily exactly like it. Well, I find this to be really helpful. I had to learn all the shapes that make a face, and I know that you immediately think when I say that I would immediately think, well, eyes, nose, you know, there's this shape for the nose, there's this shape for the chin, and well, yeah, those are shapes, but there are really important smaller shapes that I think get overlooked. And so this key component on the mouth that was giving me this unnatural bubbly mouth look for the entire job and mystifying me, I thought I had other things wrong. This shadow right here that goes, you know, where the cheek makes that fold in the skin when someone smiles or stretches their cheeks like that, you'll put that line in there, but there's a very important shadow that creates a divide between this area where the teeth are and the cheek. There's a divide in there, and so you see I have that shadow that goes down and it has this width to it that's between the nostril and the cheek. Just putting that in there got rid of the bubbly mouth look, and so then once I noticed that, I was like, oh man, that's it, that's the weird look. Well, a lot of other things needed adjusted, but it was so much easier to feel out the adjustments. Like, oh, he's got kind of a flat nose now, so I'm going to raise up the nostril. So I did. I raised up the nostril. I was able to see things more easily once I corrected that weird, unnatural thing. So there are little things like that that have a significant effect on a face looking natural. And so that one I just found was I was blind to until just this last week. Now, I need a little bit of slack on that face. If you go look at my how to draw hair video of me just drawing, it's an old video and there's a lot that I hadn't learned about drawing faces. That's kind of helpful in understanding the way shapes of hair, the way hair is in clumps, and how you can put light and shadow on those that corresponds to the actual shape you're trying to create with the hair. That's what I'm trying to say. So here I have, you can see my little highlights going across, you know. Like if this was one curve of hair bending like that, you know, like a wave, you know, then you'd have that bright area that was all where the hairs were all at that same angle. Those areas, you know, like when you look at my head, these lights maybe aren't the best for it. Let's see, I'm looking at the camera. If somebody has hair that just goes straight down like this, you'll see a line of reflection around it. Because it's many hairs all reflecting the same area. on each hair, so it creates this solid row. And so when you're mindful of that with hair, you can kind of put it where you want it to be and work with it. Another key component of hair is that rule of shifting hues that I have described in previous videos also, where as something brightens, it also changes hue, or as it darkens, it changes hue. Well, with blacks and whites, usually it's only changes to either a brown or a yellow, depending on the brightness level. But brown is just a dark yellow in terms of light. I mean, that's your computer screen would just display a dim yellow in order to create brown. Well, on black hair, it shifts to that brown before it goes to a bright white where the sun is lighting it up, right? Like I have all around these edges. So to make this light look natural, it's really important that I put that color in between the white and the black so that it looks like light instead of just like mixing paint. And so shading a face is definitely difficult. It's a really hard thing to do. But again, I think that learning these shapes that make up a face, all you do is you just draw like crazy. And you just look at pictures and you look at the shape that you keep drawing over and over no matter what face you're drawing. The reason I say drawing is because painting takes longer. But the way that I learn shapes is just by studying pictures. It's not so much by going to somebody that has the knowledge or trying to find the best teacher. It's just looking, because there's faces all around. You can just look, and the more you try to reproduce those shapes that you see, the more you can become familiar. Well, so then there's another thing that I think is really important, is drawing things from memory. Just like I'm doing this, just drawing a face and trying to get it to look natural without copying it, without duplicating something that you see. It tests your memory. You know, it's like a library that you pull from. I compare it to knowing an alphabet. If you look at a word written in a language that you don't understand, then it would take you a significant amount of time to properly duplicate those symbols that you were looking at. There's probably a lot of technical rules in order to correctly write something in any given language. Well, the people who speak or read and write that language fluently do it with ease. It's not because they have exceptional skills to duplicate what they see. It's because the amount that you have to remember to make an individual is so much less when the things that all individuals have in common are committed to your memory. You know, by memorizing all these shapes that make a face, I'm finding that it greatly improves and has improved only recently my ability to look at a face and draw it accurately, because the challenge of looking at a face and drawing it just like I see is nothing compared to this challenge as far as I'm concerned. I know the different shapes that make a face that pretty much all faces have in common, so it's just a matter of I know the shape's there, so I'm just going to find it and just draw what's unique about it. That's so much easier. Alright, I've jibber-jabbered enough about this thing. Let's look at some comments from last week's post. Conrad Stayer posted Job 41. That's pretty cool. On other circumstances, I would say, what's with the super long comment? But that's actually helpful. That's a good idea. Thank you, Conrad, for the nice compliment too. Thanks. Thank you, Mona Taylor, for the nice compliment. Mr. News Art Class says, FYI, there isn't actually any latex in latex paints. I did not know that. They're just acrylic. The term latex is applied as a description of the physical qualities of the paint. Thank you for posting that. That's a new one on me. I honestly didn't know. But I wonder what the difference is in the composition. It seems like it's less solids and more liquids. I still love to work with them. They're great paints. But alright, cool. Good information. Thank you, Lily Ramey, for the encouraging report there. I'm very glad that you find the tips that I share helpful. Rusty says, I find the hardest part of nighttime painting is losing the cool details. That is a challenge. Definitely a legitimate challenge with doing dark paintings. I mean, from a distance, your contrast level is super low. I mean, you're just looking at a dark picture. This is a good point that Luke Mitchell brings up. I spent a long time learning portraits and always believed there was a rule to capture the essence without detail. I believe that too. You know, when you look at a person far away, I mean, the face you're recognizing is not big enough to have detail. I mean, it's no bigger than your pinky fingernail. You could cover it up with just your little finger. And you immediately know who that is. So when you put wrong detail in something, yeah, that makes a difference. But there's a way to capture the essence without the excessive detail. He says, I failed, but look at Pixar and Disney, who seem to make animals look like the celebrity who voiced them. True, they do an excellent job of that. I think that's a really good example. I'm right there with you, Luke. And I take that as encouragement to keep going down this road with this Harry Potter picture. Scooter McNoodle has a funny username, so I just wanted to say that. Scooter McNoodle. Thank you for the compliment. Marcus is sorry, missed out last video, was sick, but I'm back. Hey, it's always good to have you, Marcus. Murphy's Crazy Cat says, I really like this outlining, but I agree. Comments missing your intro. I miss it too. Looks really like a sea monster. It reminds me of Nessie. Wait a minute, have you seen Nessie? And don't worry about you explaining stuff. It's really soothing to listen to. Hey, alright, thanks for that nice compliment. Hank Jen Backer saying the same thing. There's no latex, no rubber in latex paint. It's just the name. Abiola Fapohunda says, have you made a video discussing selling and finding an audience that can afford paintings? Not specifically on finding an audience that can afford paintings, because I just think that it's the lucky few that get to sell their paintings for enough to make a good living on it. Art by nature has collectability based on rareness, and if it was an economy that was doing well, the field of original art and selling, and it was an easy industry, accessible industry to sell your work, then it wouldn't be rare, and then people would not be interested in paying a lot for something that doesn't have utility. Now, it does have purpose. I'm not saying art isn't valuable. It definitely is. But I just was not great at finding a way to sell original art all by itself. But I had a core philosophy that if I can make myself useful in some way, then there'll always be work. There'll be something that needs done. So I just settled for low-paying work, but it was sufficient. And I focused on skill. I want to get more skilled. And then I focused on the skill that came most natural to me and found, how can I use that? You know, I didn't just jump right into doing murals, you know, and I said this in that video that Ben posted on this comment. I just did what people needed, and then I would fund myself for doing murals really cheap. You know, it helped me to be able to do that. And then as my skill level increased, and it was very passion driven, I wouldn't recommend trying to do that with something that you can't focus on for hours a day, because that's really necessary. You got to get those thousands of hours in order to get that skill level. That's been my approach, and I think it's a very old-fashioned approach, is just be skilled at what you do and listen to all the good advice that's out there about how to market your skill once you have it. And that can be a missing element. Somebody who's talented can think that they're going to get by on talent alone, and that's not the case either. I want to thank you for watching again. It's always a pleasure. I'll look forward to getting back to the Leviathan painting next week. And I want to remind you that if you want to pledge $1 a month on Patreon, patreon.com/MuralJoe, we post a bonus video there once a month for the patrons, just as a thank you for choosing to help us out and support with $1 a month. If you only continue to watch the free videos here on YouTube, then I definitely appreciate you doing that. That's also a big help and a thrill for me to do it. So I'll look forward to seeing you next week.